Hello and welcome to the Modern Digital Enterprise, the digital transformation podcast from Anexinet, part of the Anexinet podcast network. Our house is torn apart in the midst of this whole pandemic. I was in a meeting yesterday and Reagan texts me and she says, "Why is there water dripping from the door frame on the first floor?" Which is never a good text to get. No. And so, of course, and I couldn't leave the meeting. So it's like, the longest meeting ever. And then I go in there and sure enough, there's just water mysteriously dripping from the door frame on the first floor. And so then we had plumbers come out and, they're not practicing any kind of social distancing guidelines at all. They're not wearing masks and, and then they got to carve like 5 holes in the walls until they can figure out where the leak is. And of course it's like right behind the sink where they probably should have carved the first hole. and then they replace a bunch of pipes. And they said that it's probably been leaking for like a month. And like all this insulation up there is like totally soaked. And so now we got to have a guy come in and check for mold and all this stuff. And then they left. And then as soon as they left, I took a look at what they did. And there's like, the pipe is like wet. There's like drops of water on it. I'm like, okay, that's impossible. And I can literally see like a droplet like forming through the pipe. Like through the wall of the pipe. Somehow there's a hole that's so small. And I call the guy back and they come back and they like missed like the one. That's probably the only leak and they missed it by like 2 inches. They replaced all the other pipe. And so now we got these giant holes in our house and now we have to have more people come out and breathe on us. I feel like I have the coronavirus right now, even though they just left like an hour ago. I feel like I'm already like, that's it. I'm done for.
You could just cover them up with picture frames.
We could. Well, one of them's like in the ceiling. So that never looks natural.
I mean, there's always a first. I mean, you go to, it would be when you go to, one of those modern art museums and you kind of have to lie down on the floor to kind of really understand what this painting is all about.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good idea.
Or buy a painting of like a skylight.
That's a good idea. Just put a skylight over it. Just screw it on. Or a piece. So the funny thing is I thought I was going to have like kids in here with me to avoid being in the house with the plumbers, but that didn't happen. So I thought that would be cute if they were like bombing our Zoom on Zoombombing. But that didn't happen. So it's just me.
The only difference between what's going on out there and what would happen here is it'd be cute. All the stuff that's happening out there is not so cute.
I know. I'd feel remiss if I didn't include a chicken story. So we also have some chicken bombing that happened. We got 2 more chickens from a lady in Haverhill, and they're like 9-week-old chickens. And so far, our old chickens are not happy with the new chickens. Well, one of them's okay with them, and one of them is just not having it. So they got chicken bombed. So
I'm not sure how to react to that. Is it a good thing or a bad thing?
Welcome to the Modern Digital Enterprise, your digital transformation podcast from Anexinet, part of the Anexinet podcast network. We have my co-host, senior strategist Glenn Gruber is with us.
Hi, everybody.
And Nitin Bhatia, senior strategist Nitin Bhatia is here with us. Less senior.
Less senior, yeah, definitely 2 seniors, definitely less senior than the 2 seniors on this.
But you have children now, so that automatically ages you about 20 years.
That is true. Does that mean I can get my seniors discount when I go
Dunkin'
to order breakfast? Yeah, that's right. Yep.
Yeah, I think anybody can now that we're just ordering over our phones and stuff. I got really good at getting an Amazon fresh delivery. That's one skill that I've improved in the
I
pandemic.
thought that they canceled Amazon Fresh.
Yeah, you thought so.
Yeah.
Why?
No, because I heard that it was like being like overused or whatever. They just couldn't scale it, so they just like stopped it. Maybe it's only in certain parts of the country.
Speaking of scaling up, I think the whole COVID-19 situation has definitely expedited the adoption of some platforms that were slowly but surely getting out there. I know there was an entire community built around online learning, but that hadn't quite the penetration into our public education system. And now you're starting to see, not just our public education systems, but everything from the education to dance classes, to soccer practice, to all the extracurricular activities that we'd have to drive our kids to are now kind of going online. And not to mention even personal things that we took for granted, like, happy hours and even weddings. Like I see that people are having weddings online on Zoom. So that's interesting.
Yeah, weddings and birthdays. We were thinking about maybe having some kind of a virtual bat mitzvah for Noah. Luckily, we are not very good Jews, and we're very lazy, and we never planned a bat mitzvah for her. So that's a win. That's one in the win category for us.
Well, alternatively, I mean, the real benefit to it would be that now you can have an unlimited invite list. They don't cost you any money because you don't have to give them any food. But then there's still the expectation that they should all send checks.
Yes.
Yeah, as gifts.
They can
so like Venmo. It could be a complete windfall.
Yeah, that's a great idea. They could just
I may have a second bar mitzvah just to collect the money.
I might have a second circumcision.
I think you'll have to edit that part out.
That's a really good. I hadn't even thought of that. Now we could really rake it in. I could pay for all those holes in the walls that we have.
All I'm going to say is on your other idea, which is a bad idea, but I'm not going to cut my own hair. I certainly would not cut my own.
Yeah, you don't want to do that.
Yeah,
but that would violate the social distancing, though, for sure.
Also, something you probably don't want to be like sharing over video.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Speaking of Zoom bombing.
So that's what we are supposed to be talking about today, Zoom bombing. But I actually like some of those other topics better. But anyway, so how much did their traffic increase? Like
they went from 10 million daily users to 200 million daily users essentially overnight.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's not surprising because it's a great product, but why not Skype? Like, why wasn't it evenly distributed? Like, you would think like WebEx would get some, Skype would get some, FaceTime would get some, Google would get some.
Well, I think from my perspective, that it all has to do with like the quality and the pricing of these different platforms. Like Skype, I used to use Skype all the time. And then Microsoft bought Skype. And then Skype has basically been in some sort of purgatory for the last 6 years, to the point where I hardly use it at all, except with one group that I still keep in touch with. WebEx is expensive. GoToMeeting is less than WebEx, but still more than Zoom. And both WebEx and GoToMeeting were not set up for the kind of typical SaaS onboarding, like, try it for free, like the free tier type of thing that Zoom was set up for, because the other two were really more focused around typical, corporate sales kind of approach. So you couldn't really go on to GoToMeeting and just start using it at the free tier, for the ad hoc meetings. So I think that's a big part of it. And, FaceTime's awesome. Like my daughter uses FaceTime with, her group of friends, and they'll have like, 6 or 8, however many kids, on the FaceTime, but, not every kid has an iOS device, or not every, employee has an iOS device. So it doesn't scale across the different mobile platforms.
I think Zoom has also done phenomenally good marketing. I think that they're just, anytime you Google, meeting, conference, online conference, Zoom shows up pretty up there in the list. And it also, is very seamless. It has the least amount of friction from a usability perspective. So if you think about it, when you download a tool like Skype or Teams, I know does it, those tools are more enterprise oriented. So there's a lot of bells and whistles on them. Zoom was sort of no frills, you 2 clicks and you have a meeting going, right? So I think that was kind of the really, the selling factor for a lot of the people who had never been in this online space and who had never had to figure out how to deliver their services online. And that's the last thing that they wanted to do, is kind of go learn a new tool, right? They're still trying to figure out how are they going to deliver service via this online mechanism. So I think that was also one of the biggest selling points for them.
Maybe the ease of a browser based, because they can use it on Chromebook, so they don't need to download an app for it.
I mean, it's also Google has tried doing this any number of times. I mean, there's Duo, there's Google Meets, there used to be Hangouts, which I think maybe is now Meets. It's not 100% clear to me what that product lineup is like, but it's not a real focus for them. It's okay, but it's not anything that's, a great platform in comparison to the others.
Yeah, but this meeting, I didn't set a password, and You guys just clicked the link. So what's that about? I mean, I thought Zoom had patched everything.
So let's kind of take one step back and kind of understand, what are we even talking about? Zoombombing is not a proliferation into the corporate sort of enterprise and business accounts, right? Because we are under a specific domain. And when we're sharing meeting IDs, those are with known users, right? For the most part. What we're specifically talking about on this Zoombombing side is folks who are opening sort of personal accounts, be it under the free tier or the professional tier that allows you to do a little bit more. And what's essentially happening is the default. So when Zoom built their product, they had their enterprise customer in mind. So we're always going to have good actors on this platform. We're always going to have people who have their best interests and people who are looking to do the right thing and people who are looking to collaborate. They never thought about the fact that, hey, this could be kind of some of the other platforms like Hangout that's more kind of consumer facing to be in that particular space. At least I don't think they were necessarily targeting it to be in that space. So once everybody got these free accounts, you started to see, people, just the sheer irony of having that minimal friction. People were sharing their meeting IDs, which is, their personal meeting IDs online, and being able to have these Zoom meetings with minimal amount of friction. And they were not necessarily putting in the right security kind of mindset to say, hey, anybody with the link could join this meeting. Again, just going back to, they're trying to figure out how to deliver service over a platform, not necessarily figuring out the ins and outs of the platform. So, some people with time on their hands thought that this would be a fun activity to go on to other people's Zoom accounts and do all sorts of things that are counterproductive. So I think that's kind of where the focus has been. I don't think we necessarily need to be concerned. We could, but there are the right mechanisms and the right security in our corporate accounts embedded to be able to shield us from some of that. Now, some additional steps that we could be taking is kind of enabling waiting rooms, disabling sharing if we know that this is a one-way conversation, which it isn't, I hope not, and bringing all participants into mute.
And I'll add on to what Nitin said. I mean, he's 100% right. But within the user configuration and at least for the corporate accounts, where you can also request to have a password, but for the most part, to make life easy to just invite folks, or, hey, we forgot to invite Joe, let's have Joe join the meeting. You don't bother with the password because it's just friction to the process. But that is there, just most people have that turned off. And I think it's probably turned off by default. So that's why maybe a lot of people don't even know that exists, number one. But I think that the other challenge is where, every meeting, regardless of personal or business or whatever tier, is still 9 digits. So you can just go in, plug in any 9 digits. There's a chance somebody's having a meeting on it. You don't know what it is or who they are, but it's possible. I think that's how a lot of this is is happening. And so if you don't take any of those measures that like Nitin spoke about, or having the password, anyone can kind of come in free. So if they had thought about having a little bit more obfuscated or maybe not completely defined structure to how many digits that is, it could make it much harder for people to find an individual meeting. If it's like anything like with encryption, if you go from 4 digits, on like iOS is your password to 6, and then you go from not just digits, but starting to allow alphanumeric, you exponentially increase the number of possible variations, which makes it harder for people to kind of run across these meetings. So that bit of it, I think, is more of just a feature that they didn't think that they needed, especially as they've scaled, up until a month ago. It probably wasn't really needed. And to Nitin's point, they expected only good actors, on the scene, mostly because it was still targeted at companies where they were hoping to get subscription revenue. So.
And just speaking of default options, as of April 5th, Zoom has actually by default enabled password protection and waiting rooms. And I think, again, both of these options specifically apply to the free and the single, or the pro, I guess is that tier. So if either of us were to open an account with that, now by default, that would be the case, that those would be turned on.
But for accounts like ours that were pre-existing, they're not flipping that toggle for us, are they?
That's correct. Nope, they're not.
It's pretty amazing how much Zoom underestimated the nefariousness of the general population. Like, because there's no benefit. I mean, they're literally just doing it to annoy people, to offend people.
That's what happens when the public school system comes to a grinding halt, and you've got a bunch of kids just sitting around at home figuring out how to play fine.
Well, it's also potentially adults who are targeting kids who are doing this as well. But
True.
I just saw this headline on The Verge that Zoom bombing is now a federal offense.
Yep. Now that we are in this sort of a situation where a lot of our interactions with our day-to-day lives is going to be online. I think they're starting to think about how to structure law and order on the internet, right? And I'm sure this is just a first in very many things that they have to kind of think through. In fact, I think there's another article that talks about the New York Attorney General also doing a bunch of investigation around the whole Zoom bombing. So I think they're going to take these things very, very seriously. And I see the pendulum swinging to the extreme right, where they kind of clamp down and make it so tight, and then hopefully it'll swing back, and we'll eventually it'll land at a good equilibrium where there's a right balance of freedom online, as well as law and order.
Yeah, I feel like a federal offense definitely seems like overkill, considering how easy it was for Zoom to just like, oh, okay, well, we'll just update, we'll just make passwords mandatory, and we'll create, default waiting rooms and things like that. And I don't know, it just strikes me as being a little odd.
Well, I mean, number one, it's just out there now as a deterrent, like just like in the minds of people. And it's kind of like, when there was like, if you remember the club, the thing that you would put on your car. And it's like if there's a criminal just walking down the street and they see, this car has a club and there's 40 other cars that don't, like you just move on. So, hopefully it's just one of those things where people are like, all right, I'm not going to bother. Like it's not worth my while. But it had to be a federal issue and not anything that could be done by states, because most of this is done over state lines. So by default, it was either, if anything was going to be done, it had to be done at a federal level.
Oh, right. I mean, it could even be from another country.
Yeah. Which would still fall under the purview of the federal government.
Yeah. So it was that easy. Like that was my first question, was how are people finding other people's Zoom meetings? And it's literally just a matter of typing in a random 6-digit number.
Actually, there are a couple of researchers out there. I'm trying to recollect their names. There's definitely a lengthy article that kind of illustrates how people have written I don't know if it's an AI platform or an AI program that actually randomly generates and starts to ping the APIs of Zoom to see if they can join specific meetings. And once they find it, they kind of put it up on this online bulletin board of some sort. And that's how, people are figuring out what meetings are relevant meetings versus which ones are not. And that's why it's important to not use your personal meeting ID, which I don't think you get in the free account, but you definitely get in the professional account. And that way you're constantly changing that meeting ID so that, so that's one deterrent, constantly changing the meeting ID. Second deterrent is putting a password on it. Third deterrent is, putting waiting rooms. And, there's lots and lots of layers. Like if you think about security, it comes in layers. It's not like this big hammer and you take something out with this giant hammer, right? The security comes in layers. And ultimately, like we do with any of our projects and client engagements, you have to balance kind of security with user experience, right? So if you're in a setting where, let's say I'm like in a corporate setting where I'm doing a webinar and we know that it's going to be a one-way broadcast, I'm going to lock it down. I'm going to lock down any sort of screen sharing. I'm going to lock down any sort of video sharing. I'm going to lock down, I guess, muting most participants when they come in, put in a waiting room. So it'll be on the pretty extreme side of kind of, controlling the entire meeting. And then you have the flip side of it where you have a lot of teachers out there, educators out there who are, or even in a corporate setting where you're looking for more of a collaboration format. And in those cases, your audience is much smaller, right? In a webinar, your audience is much larger and unknown. In a more collaborative sort of smaller group setting, your audience is smaller and you know them for the most part. So then you kind of alter your Zoom settings and your meeting preferences based on the type of meeting that you're having. So you don't have to kind of go at it for every single meeting, require passwords every single meeting, require waiting rooms. If the audiences are known, if they're trusted, you know them well enough, they're not going to share that link with others or post them on some social media websites, then I think it makes sense to kind of go with the low fidelity and, minimal friction approach. Or if you have folks that you don't necessarily know or haven't spoken to them, or as a bigger group, then I'd kind of go with a higher fidelity and kind of clamp down on the settings.
So is there anything that people need to do at this point specifically, or like are all these settings now just baked in? Do people still need to go in and change some preferences, or is that all default now?
I think for the free and the pro account, which is their lower two tiers, they have turned those on by default. I think for the business and the enterprise, since they're sort of thinking, hey, the enterprise is probably going to dictate how clamped down they want their employees to do things. They're probably kind of segregating it that way to say, for free and pro users, we're going to turn these on by default. For businesses and enterprise accounts, you guys have the option to turn it on across the board for everybody at the admin level, or individuals can kind of tinker around with that setting and turn it on per their liking. That's kind of what I'm thinking at this point.
I think we could probably wrap up. There's just one last issue I thought would be interesting to talk about, and that is this whole China involvement. The fact that the servers are in China, or some of our data passes through China. Have you guys been reading up on that?
A little bit. There's a couple of things to consider. Like, number one, I don't think that this is a Chinese plot. Like, there's been a lot of that sort of supposition around just the coronavirus in general.
Yeah.
I don't think that the whole thing was a giant plot to, increase the sales of Zoom. So let's maybe throw that aside for a minute. I had a air quotes friend on Facebook, basically intimating that part of the plan is for them to be able to sell, more surgical masks to the U.S. like at like $1 a piece. Like, this is not the plan. Like, so whatever. Let's put that aside. All the conspiracy theory stuff aside, but understand that the founders of the company were of Chinese heritage, and a large portion, just like many companies outsourced to India, over time. Because of that, most of their product development team, their software engineers, are in China. So that's why there's a lot of things over there. So that I think is just an unfortunate outcome of how they started their business. The one thing that I will say is, and this was pointed out in a number of different blogs, I mean, like, Zoom has never been really great about privacy and security. And this goes back to things from the past year or so that have been uncovered by other security researchers, where there was a backdoor where you could turn on someone's camera remotely, even though you're not supposed to have that capability. There were things that even if you uninstalled Zoom, like it was installing this server in the background, and when you did the uninstall, like that server that was installed locally remained on your computer. And theoretically, that was a vector for attack that can be used even if you said, "Hey, I'm done with Zoom. I've uninstalled." So there have been a number of things there, and then I think in relation to the China part, the issue is that they said that they were end-to-end encrypted, but the truth is that it was the transmission was encrypted, but everything that was happening on their servers, again, which many of them were, perhaps in China because of their development process, that it was not encrypted on the servers themselves. That's the big problem. So yeah, they did say at one point that, hey, we were 256-bit encrypted. Turns out that they were only 128-bit encrypted. And then they were using electronic code book. And there was one blog post which was Shiner on security. And the comment there is, they said that, okay, I'm okay with AES 128, the 128-bit encryption, but using ECB, electronic codebook mode, indicates that there is no one at the company who knows anything about cryptography. So I think that there's a number of issues. Yeah, I think that maybe all of the encryption piece has either not been a priority. There's enough commentary out there that just says that it's not been anything that the company has purposefully not focused on it. I don't know any of the individuals there, so I can't, judge intent, but their past history is not super encouraging from that perspective. However, the good news is that with all of this stuff that's come up and the bright light that's being shown on them, which has been both great for their business, but is also now forcing them to address a lot of these issues that they've either allowed or let to happen either intentionally or unintentionally, but they're having to address all of these now. So from a future perspective, hopefully that's better for everybody.
Just putting this in the context of a lot of the things that we do for our customers, right? When was the last time that security actually held up a launch? When was the last time that security actually sold a particular deal for us, right? I think security in the grand scheme of things only starts to come into play when it's a problem. It's like insurance. As long as you don't use it, you're good, right? But once you have to use it, hopefully you have a good insurance. And security is sort of the same way. So I think Zoom kind of being they wanted to be feature rich. So I think that's what they kind of focused on and tried to beat other platforms at that particular game, and they were doing well. So that's the kind of the dice that they continue to roll on. And now that they had this upsurge, just sort of exposed a lot of gaping holes in that kind of in a sort of fully rounded product, and they're starting to see all these issues pop up.
Right. And it's not like the risk is that great, right? I mean, you're still just talking about somebody being shown or somebody hearing
no.
sort of
Just,
bad
trust
content.
me, there are governments out there that are using Zoom as a way of communicating. So that definitely is a big deal.
Oh, right.
Boris Johnson, I think Johnson, he used Zoom to have some of those meetings. So, there's encryption is definitely at play here, especially when we're talking government agencies and communication between those government agencies.
So like the real risk, and maybe this is why it's a federal offense, is maybe like the risk of espionage versus the risk of your kid seeing like a naked person, right? Like somebody like actually just listening in to something that they shouldn't be, like a federal government Zoom versus, your kid's kindergarten class.
Yeah, it's actually I think it got more traction, frankly, because of the kindergarten class than it did because of the espionage piece of it. And I have zero proof of this, so yeah, but it just seems to me that because so many schools were using this, and now all the parents are perhaps at home maybe seeing some of this happen, that it just became a larger issue from that perspective. But I do agree with Nitin that it is the espionage, both international espionage as well as just corporate espionage.
Right.
We're having this conversation here, and so we don't care if anyone listens, because hopefully they're going to listen later, off of iTunes. But if we were talking about, like, if we were working for Coca-Cola and talking about how we may want to tweak the secret recipe for Coke, that would be bad if someone else was listening in. So I think it's really all across the board.
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense now. I also just found an article that says that an automated tool developed by security researchers is able to find around 100 Zoom meeting IDs in an hour.
Yep,
and
that's the tool that I was referring to.
Yeah.
The one thing that I will say that I know that the Zoom CEO put out a fairly lengthy blog post articulating that they messed up, and here's what they're doing to fix it. And there are lots of there are lots of good things in there. For starters, they've obviously frozen all the feature development, and they're going to specifically focus on plugging the privacy and security gaps in their product. I think they're bringing in a CISO, sort of a council, and doing sort of a little bit of an independent study, or I guess building out the best practices. So I think they're on the right track. I think this default everybody's options to be waiting room and password is just the tip of the iceberg. I think Zoom has a really long way to go to do its part, but I don't want to lose track of the fact that with Zoom doing their part, I think there is a certain amount of responsibility on us as users of Zoom, and that not only applies to corporate users, but even your free single. Like, we have to do common sense kind of things and make sure that we're doing our part to have meetings that are sort of safe and in the walls that they intend to be in. So I think it's both sides. I don't think Zoom will go to the extent of logging down their platform, because that will essentially impact their product and the user experience that they're trying to deliver. So I think they're going to be really, really careful about how they go about introducing layers of security. But I think us as users on our end, we also have to make sure that we're going through the options and ticking and tying things in terms of what meeting are we intending to have, how do we want to engage with our audience, and what how to build a meeting around that. So just making sure we do our part too.
And just one last thing to add, because of all this stuff that has been going on, it looks like New York City banned Zoom from being used for the classroom for kids because of all this stuff.
Yeah.
No way.
Yep. There's lots of there's lots of schools and businesses that are now banning Zoom. In fact, one of our clients got wind of this, and they have declined on using Zoom for any of our meetings. So that goes to tell you how this could impact Zoom as a company. So I'm hoping that they realize that this is going to spread like wildfire. And I think that's one of the reasons their CEO got out there and did the number one thing that you're supposed to do, is acknowledge that they made a mistake. And the number two thing is, how are we going to fix it, right? So I think they're doing the right steps. Hopefully they can they can be faster than the fire spreading and Zoom losing a lot of the momentum that it's gained in recent time.
I mean, do you think that was premature to ban it? I mean, considering the new password and waiting rooms and.
Yes and no. Like, I don't know. It's, people are going to, you can't always wait to see like what the final solution is.
Yeah.
So, and especially if you're responsible for kids, like, there are other tools. There's no point in introducing that risk, unnecessarily. It's not like, if there's some jitter, or loss of connection, during, a third grade, history class, like it's not the end of the world. Yeah, you probably are more concerned with the other piece of it. So, I don't know.
Yeah. I just know that I need my kids to go back to school soon, because I don't think we were supposed to be around our children this much. I don't think it's healthy. That's why the school system evolved the way it is. That's why society evolved the way it did, because nobody wants to be around their kids this much. It's crazy. It's driving me a little crazy.
Are you going to have any sort of disclaimer on this webinar? These opinions are expressly the opinions of Steve Brickman.
They're the opinions of any parent of our 6-year-old. Oh, maybe any 6-year-old. I don't know. But yeah. Well, that's great, guys. Thanks a lot for squaring that up and tying off the loose ends and putting it all together. And thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Modern Digital Enterprise, the digital transformation podcast from Anexinet, part of the Anexinet podcast network. All right, stay healthy, guys.
Okay. You too. Thanks.
Keep your hands clean. All right. Be safe, be healthy. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
As a leading technology consultancy and reseller, Anexinet helps clients provide a complete digital experience for customers, employees, and end users. We accomplish this through our holistic approach, which encompasses all aspects of today's digital journey, end-to-end. Anexinet partners with top technology vendors like HPE to offer products and services that enhance the digital experience across customer engagement, enterprise mobility, cloud and hybrid IT, and analytics. Because great digital experiences rely on the smooth operation of all interconnected elements. From strategy through execution, we deliver custom multi-channel applications, including web, mobile, chat, and voice. With self-service apps for customer loyalty and enterprise apps that streamline internal processes, now you can reimagine legacy applications to propel your business forward. Anexinet also helps you embrace modern cloud and hybrid IT infrastructure to provide a seamless experience at every touchpoint, empowering you to recover quickly from disaster, scale to meet demand, and automate systems for perfect performance 24/7. And to maximize your competitive advantage, we ensure you always deliver the best experience possible by continuously honing your digital solutions through data-driven insights. So, how do you know if your business has what it takes to provide the complete digital experience? One that sets you apart, maintains competitive edge, and turns users into passionate fans? Simple. Just give us a call. Together, we can deepen engagement and make every digital experience remarkable.